Classical Conversations presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today we're talking about Trump guilty. Is that going to affect the election this fall? And Illinois' handoff approach to homeschooling, is that allowing more abuse to occur in the home? We'll jump into those topics today on Refining Rhetoric. Chris, what's our first article?
All right, we're pulling up an opinion piece from ProPublica. This is by Molly Parker and Beth Hunsdorfer from Capital News, Illinois. No schoolers, how Illinois handoff approach to homeschooling leaves children at risk.
Yeah, so we've started to see in these blue states, they're trying to pass more and more homeschooling regulations. We're seeing that in Michigan and now Illinois, where they're claiming that because of homeschoolers operating outside the system, that they have an opportunity to abuse their kids. And so the government needs to step in and monitor or visit these families, or at least create a database where these families can be tracked into the future. And so it's kind of interesting. NERI is a research organization, and they show that homeschoolers have no significant difference in child abuse or any of these things than anyone in any other institution. There a lot of data suggests that it is significantly less, but obviously there is some opportunities there. So whenever I see these articles, they always pick some like heartbreaking story that happens, but you can see these same type of stories all the time from people that send their kids to government institutions where 40% of kids are bullied, and 11% say that they've experienced some sort of sexual deviance from a teacher or an educator, and those are being monitored basically 8 hours a day, have plenty of adults around, and it's still going on. So just really interesting on how they're trying to continue to attack our homeschooling freedoms.
Yeah, as I'm scrolling through this article, I'm struggling to find concrete numbers. And I think that's actually one of their problems is like, we don't know how many people are homeschooling. We don't know how many people are being abused by being homeschooled or unschooled. And so it's really hard to find good data on this. And like you said, I think there's mixed reporting. How do you measure how many people are being abused in an unschooled system? Well, you have to go based off of charges, and even that's kind of a muddy area to study in. So
how does the government define abuse these days as well? Because it seems like you can promote LGBTQ stuff to kids and sexualize them, but if you give them a spanking, then that's probably considered abuse to many of these left-leaning think tanks. So it's a very gray area, and I don't think the government needs to have any more input on what homeschoolers are doing. They very clearly are failing at running the system that they have complete and utter control over. And so if you are not being successful in your current responsibilities, there's no way that we should give you more responsibilities. And, the Bible talks about that kind of with elders. If you're not able to run your own household, you're not qualified to be an elder in your own church. And we should take that same principle here and say, look, if the government, fixes abuse in the system that they can control, then yeah, maybe they should have some more oversight into homeschooling. But since they're failing so far with that system, they have no reason to make homeschooling more difficult for millions of parents around our country.
Another thing, as I'm going through this, these are really heartbreaking anecdotes, these stories that they're bringing in about like kids that are just malnourished and their parents aren't taking care of them. It's a reminder to me that as a Christian, to make sure that we're supporting these institutions that are doing things about this. Because there's a lot of different really good groups and support groups and institutions that are putting money where their mouth is and actually trying to help these families. And so like, I don't think that this is necessarily a good spot for the government to intervene and solve some of these problems, that they're just going to cause more problems in separating families. But as a Christian, we need to be, making sure that we're doing our part.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to isolate ourselves. And, HSLDA or the Homeschool Foundation has, grants for people who are in tough situations to help them homeschool. And of course, local churches should be supporting homeschooling families with grants and, facility space usage and, expertise and things like that. So it's really these situations are people who've isolated themselves, but you can isolate yourself no matter what school system you're in. So yeah, it doesn't seem like anything that they're bringing up in this article is unique to homeschooling at all, and is should require additional oversight. But a lot of people like to assume guilt before innocence, and we have a judicial system, at least historically, built on the assumption of innocence until you're guilty. And that seems to be going away a little bit. I think Russia had the old saying in communism that show me the man and I'll find you the crime. And it seems that our judicial system has successfully done that. Donald Trump found guilty of a felony charge. And think if you're interested in the story, you can go, figure out where you stand on it. It's a very unique way that they found him to become a felon. But guilty or not guilty, does this really affect the polls? And does this affect the election in November? And does it help Donald Trump, or like Joe Biden and the Democrats hope for? Does this sink his campaign?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So here's the PBS News article we pulled up. Guilty or not, Trump verdict most likely won't sway voters, poll shows. And so I think this is super fascinating. Everybody's so dug in on the topic. It doesn't matter whether or not Trump's a felon. He's your guy or he's not. And that's where we're at. The evidence is out there. People know what the charges are. People are aware, and they don't care, because at the end of the day, there's so many large litmus issues that we're fighting over. This is like almost a non sequitur to most voters.
Yeah, it's very interesting because how they get to him being a felon is unprecedented, to say the least. And the federal government, which would normally take over this sort of case that New York found him, refused to prosecute it. This article is saying 67% of voters said a conviction would make no difference for them in November, including 74% of independents. And so, yeah, I think you've got your sides, and it's just kind of the people in the middle. One of the interesting things that happened was Donald Trump raised a record amount of money right off of it. I see a lot of tech people who've historically supported Biden now supporting Donald Trump. And it seems like a lot of people are saying that this case is that this lawfare is making it so that they're actually more likely to vote for Trump because they don't want to be targeted because they have the wrong political views. And it was interesting looking at some of the polling coming right after this. It's actually made no difference in the polls. Some of them have gone up a little bit for Trump. Some of them have gone up a little bit for Biden, all within the standard deviation of error. So it seems that Americans are either skeptical. I don't think anyone thinks that Donald Trump is a saint, but I think a lot of Americans are skeptical whether these charges are warranted. I know a lot of businesses are looking to leave New York because of this environment where if you don't agree with what the governor says or the mayor says, it seems like they're going to drag you in court and kind of make stuff up about you or try to put things together that really don't make a whole lot of sense in order to make a statement.
So looking back at this poll, it's actually really wild. So the poll measured whether or not people would be more or less likely to vote for Trump, depending on a guilty or not guilty verdict. And what it shows is that 15% said they're more likely to vote if he was found guilty, and only 17% were less likely. So even though 67% said there was no difference, the people that said there was a difference, it's even split, like that they're either more or less likely. So it's really changing absolutely nothing. And that all goes into all the big societal things that matter more to people than whatever this trial is about, right? You have the war. The U.S. is being entangled into different wars that people don't want to be involved in, and they don't feel like they're being heard.
Yeah, and the economy is terrible. As far as household buying power, it's actually dropped during Joe Biden. So even though people's wages have risen, inflation is so much higher that we're seeing people's buying power has been decreased. And I think businesses are seeing that all over the place. And I think ultimately, whether you like Trump or don't like Trump, I think this Illinois article and what they're trying to do is if they're willing to kind of stretch the law in such a way to get someone they don't like, how much more are they going to be willing to do that in like a homeschooling situation where if they don't like you homeschooling, they can find ways to, take your kids away from you or do these different things. And I really think that you can see these articles as separate and these things as separate, but lawfare, the government creating more laws and then trying to enforce those laws, even if there's not really anyone who's hurt by it, is just another way of expanding the power of the state. And so it's important that we're vigilant and that the law is used properly in our country, because once we lose the law, we lose our country. Well, that's all we have for today. I'd love to hear your comments on do you think this affects the election? And do you think the state should have more oversight on homeschoolers? Until then, keep practicing those 15 skills at home. Share this episode with a friend and be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and follow me on X, The Robert B. Show. Until next time, God bless. Hey everyone, I want you to know about our newest Copper Lodge Library book, English Epic Poetry. English Epic Poetry is a collection with Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the Canterbury Tales, selections from Paradise Lost, and it introduces them with historical context, tips for reading epic poetry, as well as footnotes that will help you while reading the text. You know that sometimes we think about how can this text be Christian? What does it tell about the relationship we have with Christ? And even in less overtly religious poems like Sir Gawain and the Canterbury Tales, we find Christian themes like courage, forgiveness, and the right use of power. And so go today to copperlodgelibrary.com to see the entire epic collection of books that we have, including the newest one, English Epic Poetry. So go to copperlodgelibrary.com today or the classicalconversationsbooks.com website to make your purchase. Now back to the show.
Welcome to Classical Crypto with Will. It is such a pleasure to be with you today. As always, the dam continues to break in cryptocurrency. We're potential regulators, lawmakers, politicians, everyone's coming together. Not always together, but they're coming together to have a conversation around crypto, and it's fierce. There's a lot of opposition, but at the same time, these big players who have opposed for a long time are pushing things through. We talked about Donald Trump's, his campaign accepting cryptocurrency, which is just incredible to me. 7 different cryptocurrencies that they are now taking. And Donald Trump has then surprised the news by issuing this statement just a couple days ago. He said, "I will ensure that the future of crypto and Bitcoin will be made in the USA." So he has joined the train of making sure that regulation happens quickly so that innovation stays inside the US, because what's happening is that major crypto firms and technologies are going overseas so they can have their freedom from taxation or from uncertainty of regulation and can continue to develop and grow. And Trump saying, hey, that's not going to happen under my watch. Elect me. I see the value in this. I want to make sure that US stays strong and that we innovate here at home. So I absolutely love it. He also issued a statement saying, and I quote, "I will support the right to self-custody to the nation's 50 million crypto holders." So he's coming in going, hey, I hear you. I see you. There's 50 million of you. I will stand with you. So it's fantastic to see this from Donald Trump. In bigger news than this, I need to read off a statement from the House Financial Service Committee. They released this just last week, May of 2024. It says FIT 21, that is a bill that they have been working on in the House, U.S. House of Representatives. FIT 21 provides the regulatory clarity and robust consumer protections necessary for digital asset ecosystem to thrive in the United States. This bill passed the U.S. House of Representatives last week. It was a big surprise to the crypto. I think it was a big surprise to the world, not just the crypto community. And they were like, wow, this was a bipartisan effort where 71 Democrats came over and voted with Republican lawmakers to make sure that this bill passed. Now, it's not out of the woods. The White House earlier in the week had threatened to veto it. They came back and said, hey, we're not going to veto it, which is huge, but we definitely have some stipulations to put in place if it passes the Senate. So it's going from the House to the Senate, and I'm hearing there's more murky waters in the Senate. So this was a big victory that the bill passed the House. Moving on to the Senate, I'm sure there's going to be stipulations. It could be another 2 or 3 month fight. Hopefully it'll get through the Senate. It'll go to Biden, and at the moment, if he has a couple stipulations in there, he will sign off on it. Now, I'm wondering if this is in response to Donald Trump, who's just embracing cryptocurrency, almost out of the blue. If Biden's like, wow, I better play ball if I want to keep up. That is completely speculation on my end, but some of that could be happening because we've gone from we hate this, we're going to veto it, it's rat poison, to, oh, we'll accept it with some stipulations, which just is a huge surprise to me. But I'm very excited about this. I'm grateful that Cynthia Lummis, who is that senator we talked about last week, she is on the Hill building a crypto army, strengthening the blockchain community. It's really awesome to see them making some progress, and to see this pass in the House of Representatives was just really, it was something special. This has been Classical Crypto with Will. Tune in next time to learn more about cryptocurrency and hear the latest financial news in U.S. politics.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.